This video is brought to you by Brilliant. Start learning about science, math, engineering, computer science, and so much more thanks to Brilliant's accessible and interactive courses. Click below to try it for free or be among the first 200 to sign up and get a 20% discount on an annual subscription. More details after the video. Okay, so by now some of you will have heard about a situation involving Jirard, aka the Completionist, and his management of charity funds that he's collected over a 10-year period. There's no allegation that he pocketed the money, but it's also clear that none of that money has yet been paid out to any charity, an amount circa $650,000. So there's a lot of detail in this, and rather than recount it here, I'm going to leave links to the videos by Carl Jobst and Mutahar below. That's not me wholesale endorsing the content of those videos or prejudging the situation one way or the other, but it is to say that those videos are out there, these allegations are out there, and even though Jirard is a colleague and friend, it would be inappropriate for me to not present this information to you, especially because I believe that these videos were made in good faith, and because I do believe that these videos raise important questions that need to be answered. In relation to the podcast, Lucy, Jake, and I are going to talk about it a little more at the top of this week's episode, and we want to address it together because it feels right to do it that way. For now, though, I will say that we've asked Jirard to take a step back from the podcast, at least temporarily, so that he can focus on providing as much information about this situation as he can, and so that he can focus on donating this money to an appropriate charity. That really is the most important thing in all of this. I don't want to say any more about it now out of respect for my co-host, and also because I really value Jirard. I really admire the charity work he's done over the years, not just with this charity, mind you, but with many others. So I want to give him the chance to respond to all of this, and so that's what I'm going to do, and that's all I'm going to say for now. Okay, so that was the biggest bummer of an intro I've ever had to write. Let's make fun of some video game news, I guess. I do apologize in advance if my heart is not as in it as it usually is. I hope you'll forgive me, but like they say in show business, the show must go on unless it's a SAG-AFTRA strike, in which case the show stops for like 3 months while the nanny leads her troops to victory. The good news is that we have actually got plenty of video game news to keep us distracted this week, and news doesn't get much bigger than GTA6. Yes, hardy ha, it happened again. Some big video game company carefully tracked the typical upload time of This Week in Video Games and made sure to post their news exactly 15 minutes before the episode was due to go live. This time it was Rockstar's turn to have their fun, but not before Jason Schreier stole a little bit of their thunder first. Last week he got the scoop that every game journo on the planet was dying to land. Info on when exactly GTA 6 would be revealed. Just a week after Dunkey uploaded his in-depth history of the GTA 6 announcement fakeouts, Schreier reported that his sources were saying that an announcement was imminent with an official reveal trailer to follow early in December. Sure enough, just a few hours later, Rockstar took to the tweet machine to dish up the news we've all been waiting for. Quote, "Next month marks the 25th anniversary of Rockstar Games. Thanks to the incredible support of our players worldwide, we have had the opportunity to create games we are truly passionate about. Without you, none of this would be possible, and we are so grateful to all of you for sharing this journey with us. In 1998, Rockstar Games was founded on the idea that video games could come to be as essential to culture as any other form of entertainment, and we hope that we have created games you love in our efforts to be part of that evolution. We are very excited to let you know that in early December, we will release the first trailer for the next Grand Theft Auto. We look forward to many more years of sharing these experiences with all of you. Thank you, Sam Hauser." I saw this tweet like 5 minutes after it went up and it already had like 300,000 likes. I heard that it generated so much traffic that it broke Twitter, but let's be real, that doesn't take much these days. Either way, it's exciting, and the promise of an early December reveal is a very salacious one indeed. Could Jeff Keighley have landed the biggest game announcement in the history of game announcements for the Game Awards, scheduled on December 8th? It's possible, but to be honest, I doubt it. Rockstar, and I don't know if you know this, but they're kind of a big deal, and if they don't have to share the stage with other video game announcements, then why should they? Still, the Game Awards is convenient, with viewership topping over 100 million a year, and if you can tie your announcement to all of that awards chatter, then why not? Man, can you imagine the grin on Jeff Keighley's face if he gets to announce a GTA 6 trailer? It is going to be so big and so permanent, he's going to have to call a doctor after 4 hours. I don't need to tell any of you how much of a big deal GTA 6 is. At this point, GTA is less of a video game and more of a cultural artifact. Millions of years from now, when we're long gone and alien archaeologists study our bones, they'll measure our evolution in Grand Theft Autos. They'll be like, ah yes, this human is wearing a bum bag across his chest for some reason. He appears to be from the late GTA 5 age, third console generation. GTA 5 has sold 190 million units and is the single most profitable piece of entertainment media in human history. The fact that GTA 6 has been in development for this long only further adds to people's excitement, but even if Rockstar just whipped this up and farted it out in 3 months, it'd still sell 90 million units. That is the power of GTA, though to be fair, the studio maintains an exceptionally high quality bar on their mainline releases like Red Dead Redemption 2. Just don't bring up that GTA Trilogy remaster from a little while ago. Hey, just briefly while we're on the topic of GTA, did you hear that Netflix might be trying to get on that Rockstar teat? The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Netflix are trying to sign a licensing deal that would see a Grand Theft Auto game come exclusively to Netflix. It's unclear who might make this game, what type of game it would be, whether it'd be mobile or somehow playable on TV. We don't know anything. Hell, the whole thing could be bullshit. And you know what? I kind of wouldn't be surprised if it was, since it's not like Rockstar needs to sign a deal like this for cash. They have more money than all the pharaohs combined, adjusted for inflation, of course. So I don't know, you can kind of put me in the skeptical column when it comes to this report. Take-Two Interactive are the publishers of Grand Theft Auto, and they've been projecting a quadrupling of income next year as they brace for GTA 6's release. CEO Strauss Zelnick also spoke about the longer-term plans for the publisher as they move into what he's calling a growth phase. Take-Two had previously undergone a cost-cutting and restructuring program that he says was successful, and that Take-Two are now right-sized. One of those really awful corporate euphemisms that just means we sacked a bunch of people and now we're making even more profit. Which sadly brings us to the unfortunately recurrent segment in This Week in Video Games, the part where we discuss the layoffs. Man, I really wish we could go back to those heady days of no fucking thanks. It was way more fun laughing at companies KOing themselves with monkey JPEGs than it is to have to list hundreds of game dev jobs lost every week. And yet here we are, and the first cab off the rank really hurts. Digital Extremes, makers of Warframe, they are not only cutting staff, but they're also getting out of the publishing business, and they're cutting ties with Wayfinder, the MMO light that they just released from developer Airship Syndicate. So we all know DE for Warframe and Soulframe maybe, which is their next major in-house project. In addition to that though, the studio also had a publishing arm which put out a few titles including Survived By, and more recently, Wayfinder. Wayfinder didn't do so good. It had the cataclysmically bad launch window that most live service games have, combined with the fact that it was an early access release with plenty of bugs and issues holding the game back. As a result, the game never really got any momentum, and right now it's averaging a peak concurrent player count of 600 people on Steam, which is not great. DE announced that they'd be handing publishing rights of the game over to Airship Syndicate, who in turn have publicly confirmed that they plan to continue working on the game, which is honestly great because Austin reviewed it and he said it had some great bones. Link below the like button. It'd be a real shame to see this one die so quick. But Digital Extreme's external projects division is gone. Some 30 people lost their jobs this week. One of them spoke to Polygon saying, quote, "I'm sick to my stomach. I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent," end quote. I wish I could cover this story in more detail, but unfortunately there are just too many other layoffs to cover this week. Like Free Radical Design, for example. This is the studio that made the legendary Time Splitters back in the day, and then the GPU melting Crysis game when they became Crytek. That studio was closed in 2014, but in 2021 Embracer Group reformed them under the Free Radical Design label so they could make an all-new Time Splitters game. Well, as we all know, Embracer Group are desperately hawking everything not nailed down at the moment, and it seems as though Free Radical Design might be their next cost-cutting casualty, with staff at the studio being informed last week that the studio could soon close. That notification is a requirement under UK law, which means that 30 days after that, Embracer is free to shutter the studio. As a result, VGC are reporting that at least 15 people employed at the studio have begun looking for other work. Alright, Unity's up next, fresh off their recent bit of brand kamikaze action, you know, where they tried to screw over every single developer that uses their engine with a ridiculously ill-conceived installation tax. Well, with that clangor now firmly in their past, they're on to the next one, layoffs. They announced that they intended to lay off staff as they're still losing money year on year, 125 million this year, down from 250 million last year. So far, the only executive I've seen lose their job is CEO John Riccitiello. I would be very interested to see how many more of them lose their jobs as part of this cost-cutting initiative. Spoiler alert, it's probably going to be zero. Now, if there's one company that we know is really doing it tough and that really needs to do some belt tightening, it's Amazon. You think Jeff Bezos' transformation into Pitbull comes cheap? Look at those glasses, man. They're worth at least a few thousand. Point is, Amazon only made $244 billion in profit last year, so they gotta make some tough decisions to bring their costs down. That is why this week they sacked 180 people from their video games division. That is not a joke, by the way, they actually did that. This reporting originated with Aftermath, a new site that arrived on the scene last week. They reported that Amazon were about to axe 180 jobs, and then Amazon confirmed it to Aftermath. Quote, "We listen to our customers, and we know that delivering free games every month is what they want most. So we are refining our Prime benefit to increase our focus there. With these changes in our business approach comes some changes to our resourcing, resulting in the elimination of just over 180 roles," end quote. That being from Chris Hartman, VP of Amazon Games. These workers join the 27,000 other workers that Amazon laid off in the past 12 months. Again, $244 billion in profit last year. The hits keep coming, though this is the last one for the week. Ubisoft, despite earlier saying that they wouldn't do job cuts and would rely on natural attrition for their cost-cutting goals, this week announced that they'd be laying off 124 people, localized almost entirely in their Canadian operations. This does follow a very difficult and patchy period in Ubisoft's history, with the publisher struggling to evolve key franchises, break into mobile, or stand up new IPs. Just recently, Ubisoft announced a delay of a major title in development, but weren't specific about which one that was, and they also kinda delayed Skull and Bones again, since they had earlier vaguely hinted that it might have come out this year, but in a recent earnings call they confirmed that it won't arrive until early next year, unless of course it gets delayed again, which, you know, probably will happen because it's Skull and Bones. In more encouraging news, Ubisoft celebrated the 10-year anniversary of the best Assassin's Creed ever. I'm talking, of course, about Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Ubisoft revealed that over 34 million people have had those pirate shanties stuck in their head, especially that one about the whiskey. And with these sorts of numbers, you really gotta hope that the rumors of a Black Flag remake end up being true. In other news, how'd you guys like that Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 campaign? Did you find a spare 3 hours to knock it over? By now, you might have heard that Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3's single-player campaign is pretty much the worst in the franchise's history, a fact not altogether surprising since apparently this entry wasn't initially planned as a mainline offering and was originally positioned as an expansion for Modern Warfare 2. Jason Schreier of Bloomberg said he spoke to people close to the development process, and they report that Modern Warfare 3 was developed in around 18 months compared to the typical 3-year development cycle that Call of Duty games have. This understandably led to some staff having to work intense hours to get the job done, but no one seems to be alleging a widespread culture of crunch to get the game over the finish line. Sledgehammer representatives have pushed back on this, saying that reports that the development timeline was shortened were wholly inaccurate, and that some developers may have thought it was just an expansion rather than a premium release because it was a, quote, new type of direct sequel, end quote. Not sure how the developers could be confused about that, but anyway. Regardless, the reviews paint a grim picture and definitely take some luster off a franchise that Microsoft just spent a lot of money to acquire. That wasn't all Microsoft bought though, they also got their green mitts on Blizzard, and Schreier was at BlizzCon speaking to Blizzard leadership about what was next for them as they transition into this new Microsoft era. Blizzard president Mike Ybarra seems very optimistic about the whole thing. He told Schreier, quote, "Going to Phil Spencer and saying, hey, can we do this? I think he would look at me and go, run your studio. I do think our decision making will be faster," end quote. Schreier also reported that we should be expecting World of Warcraft expansions to be arriving much faster. In a fascinating and underreported extract, Blizzard revealed that they now have effectively 3 teams working on WoW, a live team as well as 2 teams working on expansions in parallel, meaning that they can kind of leapfrog over each other every year, similar to the way that Call of Duty's 3 studios do. Blizzard have promised on many occasions that we should expect a faster cadence for WoW content, but it looks like they're finally set up to make good on that promise. It certainly wasn't all good news for Microsoft and Blizzard though, as this week saw the formal dissolution of the Overwatch League. After initially selling spots for $20 million a pop, Blizzard's mismanagement of the Overwatch IP saw interest in the league dwindle away, and this week the teams themselves voted to end the league. This triggers a termination clause, meaning that Microsoft will have to pay out $120 million across the 20 teams, compensating them for lost investment and ongoing revenue. Man, imagine buying a company for $69 billion and the first thing you get is a bill for another $120 million. It's a sad end to what was at one point the most hyped up esports event on the calendar, with dreams to establish city-based teams similar to something like the NFL. That's all gone now, and it's highly likely that Overwatch esports tournaments will be hosted by the ESL, though that is still as yet unconfirmed. A quick lightning round to finish off. Larian Studios say they're making great progress in getting Baldur's Gate 3 running on the Xbox Series S. Larian boss Sven Vinky tweeted out that the latest build was using 34% less VRAM, which is a lot, to the point where other developers were scratching their heads like, how the fuck did you do that? Baldur's Gate 3 still doesn't have an exact release date, despite reports earlier this week that there was one, reporting quickly doused by Larian's head of publishing himself. Hopefully it isn't far off, and this latest news from Vinky about the state of the port is very encouraging indeed. Veteran voice actor Elias Tufexis revealed this week that he was, at one point, one of the player voices in Starfield. During development, the game did have a voice for you, the playable character, and Tufexis was one of those voices. When Bethesda pivoted to a silent protagonist, they recast him and Sissy Jones as some of the main NPCs in the game. Pretty cool move, since Tufexis says that in those instances, it's more typical for talent to receive a polite thank you before being shown the door. Nintendo are expanding their digs, but their plans have been delayed because they want to make their new center even bigger. While the rest of the industry is laying people off left, right, and center, Nintendo announced that their new development center is going to be completed a year later than initially planned because Nintendo have increased the scale of the proposed building, citing a need to hire more staff in the future. A games publisher actively hiring and promising to hire more? Haters will say it's fake. Staying in that part of the world, good news for Xbox, it's big in Japan. Not really, but it is getting bigger. Phil Spencer was speaking to Famitsu, and in that interview he said that the PC gaming market in Japan had doubled since 2020, and the number of Game Pass subscriptions in Japan had quadrupled. Those are very vindicating figures for Spencer, who's made a big push of trying to break into the Japanese market after the Xbox brand having effectively no presence there since day dot, utterly trounced by both Sony and Nintendo. Strategic partnerships with the likes of Sega, Square Enix, and Capcom seem to be bearing fruit. Good job, Phil, and keep it up. Speaking of Xbox, breaking news, new booty just dropped. Man, I've been waiting to say that line all week. This week, Microsoft announced the appointment of Alan Hartman as the new head of Xbox Studios. Hartman was formerly over at Turn 10, makers of Forza Motorsport, but he's now taking over Matt Booty's old job. Hence, new booty just dropped. It was a long walk to get there, but I think the payoff was worth it. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, first up we got word that King Arthur Knight's Tale is headed to current-gen consoles on February 22nd. This is a turn-based tactics game from Neocore that got a really great reception when it released on PC last year, and next year it'll be available for both PS5 and Xbox Series consoles. Wolong Fallen Dynasty is getting another DLC pack in December. It's called Upheaval in Jingxiang, and it's another chapter in the increasingly sprawling Wolong saga. This is their third DLC expansion after all. It is paid DLC and it arrives on December 12th, but Team Ninja have also just rolled out a Neo 2 collaboration mission, available free to all players. Last week we got Risk of Rain Returns, the remaster of the original. This week we got the announcement of Risk of Rain 2 Seekers of the Storm. It's an all-new expansion to Risk of Rain 2, the first that Gearbox have solo developed since they had the help of former developer Hoppu Games on the previous DLC. This one adds all of the things you'd expect: new survivors, new levels, new enemies, new power-ups, and more. It's a high bar for Gearbox to clear since Hoppu have done absolutely phenomenal work on the series to this point. Hopefully Gearbox can keep it going because it still feels like Risk of Rain has a lot of life left in it yet. Seekers of the Storm has been revealed but no release date announced. I'll keep you posted. Hades is headed to mobile. Good news, right? Well, yes, but there is some bad news too. First up, it's exclusive to Netflix. To be able to play it, you need a Netflix subscription, and then you need to access the game via the Netflix app on mobile. Even more disappointing, it's exclusive to iOS devices, meaning that Android is completely frozen out on this one. Also, no Windows Phone port. Very sad times for the 4 people still ironically rocking one of these devices. Still, Hades has always been best played on handheld, so it's kind of cool that Apple kids will get to enjoy this one. It arrives sometime in 2024, no date yet, and I do wonder if this precedes an announcement of a Netflix-produced Hades TV show, because let's be real, that would be incredible. I think if Netflix executives understood the power of Rule 34, they would have greenlit this years ago, so it's nice to see them finally playing catch-up. 2 delay announcements this week, both of them coming in rather clutch, actually. The first is for the Turok 3 remaster from Night Dive. It was meant to drop this past week, but the studio have announced a delay to November 30th. They didn't explain why, but you got to assume it's to put on some finishing touches, fair enough. The other delay was for another game that was meant to release this past week, Broken Roads. This is the Australian-themed CRPG, which I'm calling Dingo Elysium. Anyone? No? Okay, alright, forget that. Let's just move on. So, this was meant to arrive last week to the point where review code had actually gone out to reviewers and people were playing it. But at the 11th hour, the studio announced a delay, and not a small one either. They're pushing it into 2024, and they haven't even provided a new date yet. The team say that the final product is a lot bigger than they'd first set out to make, clocking in at over 30 hours of gameplay and 400,000 words of dialogue, and so they needed more time to polish it up before launch. That's cool and all, but obviously something's gone at least a little haywire when you delay your game after review code is already out. Still, I respect the team for making this call. This past month alone, we've had 2 titles, City Skylines 2 and Tintin Reporter, both warn their audiences that the game runs like shit, promising to fix it post-launch rather than delay the game. That's a pretty shitty move, so as disappointing as a delay is, I'll happily take it over the alternative. So what came out last week? Only a handful of releases actually. First up was Risk of Rain Returns, a remaster of the original game, but updated to include content pulled from Risk of Rain 2, as well as an overhaul of the multiplayer, making it, playable out of the box rather than reliant on third-party services. Risk of Rain Returns has launched extremely strongly with a peak of 45,000 concurrent players on Steam, or approximately 28 Redfalls. On Steam, there are already over 7,000 reviews in, 83% of them positive, and critics are even more impressed with it sitting at a mighty 87 on OpenCritic. Gaming Bolt scored this one a 9 out of 10, saying, quote, "Whether it's your first run or your 50th, Risk of Rain Returns offers roguelike action like few other titles. The HD visuals and new content are great, but the game's excellent core is polished and enhanced even more," end quote. I'm actually playing through this one right now on my new Steam Deck OLED, and I can confirm that it is indeed excellent. The game, that is. I mean, the Steam Deck too, as well, of course. But I can very much see Risk of Rain Returns being another one of those games that I just leave permanently installed. Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, released last week for all platforms bar the Switch. This is a one-shot spin-off that continues the story of Kiryu, albeit in flashback form before he starts rocking that grey hair we all saw in the Infinite Wealth trailer. This one also keeps the real-time brawler combat that fans of the series could only recently get from the Judgment games, since the mainline entries have moved to turn-based combat. Like pretty much everything else RGG puts out, the fans have gone nuts for it, the title's sitting at overwhelmingly positive 95% on Steam. However, critics are a lot cooler on it, putting it at a strong 79. IGN scored this one a 7 out of 10, saying, quote, "Like a Dragon Gaiden's combat hits with flash and fury, and its story is sharp, but its setting and side activities feel a bit on the stale side," end quote. GameSpot offered a similar sentiment, but a little more enthusiastically put, quote, "RGG Studios' latest action brawler is a captivating and emotional look at Kiryu's life that offers a greatest hits of the series' gameplay," end quote. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 was the biggest release of last week, but we covered that one off earlier. Only other release was Spirit Tea, that Spirited Away-esque cozy game that sees you managing a bathhouse for the gods, pumping the bellows, serving hot meals, and performing general maintenance while trying to live a life in the quirky town below. I played the demo and loved every second of it. Not many reviews for this one out yet, sadly. Only 74 reviews on Steam, but it's sitting at 94% positive, and only one critic review, that of VG247. They did score it a 5 out of 5 though, saying, quote, "There's just so much to love about Spirit Tea, and I'm very glad to be able to say that this adorable rural life sim has been well worth the wait," end quote. Best of all, this one's on Game Pass, so if you're at all interested to give it a spin, I suspect you won't be disappointed. So what's coming out this week? Nothing massive, but some cool stuff nonetheless. Stuff like The Last Faith, an awesome looking 2D Souls-like Metroidvania with some top tier character designs and animations. This is one that I profiled a while back on my Put This On Your Radar segment. People really dug it. They loved it even more when they got the chance to play the Steam demo during the Steam Next Fest. Now you can play it for real when the title launches on all platforms today. Teardown is very special. This is a heist game, but unlike Payday 3, it actually works and you can play it. It's voxel based, and the idea is to plan out the most efficient heist possible by blowing up as much or as little as is necessary. It's incredible to watch. Just seeing the responsiveness of this engine is wild. The shit that can happen is insane, and the campaign has over 40 missions for you to muck around in addition to other game modes. I still don't think this one is talked about as much as it should be, but hopefully the console release helps that. It's hitting PS5 and Xbox Series consoles today. Dredge is getting its first DLC release tomorrow. It's called The Pale Reach, and it offers another 1 to 3 hours of content available at any time throughout your playthrough, delivering an all-new chapter in the storyline along with new equipment, new fish to catch, and a new boat that is able to ram its way through the frozen ice. Very nice. Seems like a small but dense bit of content, not unlike the main game itself, since Dredge was really excellent. If you haven't checked it out yet, then this is a very good excuse to do so. Assassin's Creed Nexus is a VR game exclusive to MetaQuest headsets. True story. Ubisoft emailed me about this and were like, "Do you want to play a preview build?" And I was like, No thank you, I prefer to keep my lunch in my stomach. I can handle a bit of movement in VR games, but this has like massive aerial free-falling and dodge rolls, and I was like, nope, hard pass on all that, thank you very much. Still, if you've got the stomach for it, it'll arrive exclusive to MetaQuest 2 and 3 tomorrow, no word yet on when it might arrive for other platforms. Earlier this year, Jagged Alliance returned after a 20-year hiatus. Jagged Alliance 3 released to very strong reviews and great feedback from the strategy community. It now makes its way to PS5 and Xbox Series consoles, those ports drop tomorrow. Speaking of tactics games, one of the two bigger releases of the week is Persona 5 Tactica, a tactic-style spin-off featuring the iconic Persona 5 cast. Early previews for this one have been extremely encouraging, which is not at all surprising given that it's Atlus at the helm, and while they may put out some patchy releases across their portfolio, they do not mess around when it comes to Persona. Both 5 and Royal are among the best RPGs ever made, and Persona 5 Strikers was surprisingly excellent despite its shift to an entirely new combat style. This more tactics-inspired spin on the franchise looks right at home, and you can tell that Atlus has spared little expense when it comes to things like presentation and cutscenes. Best of all, it's hitting all platforms at the same time, a welcome change for a franchise that's often much more staggered in its approach to port rollout. This arrives for PC, Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox on the 17th. The other big release this week is a remake that seems to have Nintendo fans a little teary-eyed with nostalgia. Super Mario RPG launches for the Nintendo Switch on the 17th, a top-to-bottom remake of the classic RPG that kickstarted the whole "what if Mario could do more than just jump" thing. The remake isn't just a visual overhaul, though it does look pretty damn great. It's also got some big gameplay changes, adding new features to combat, new quality of life improvements, and so much more. Nintendo did a round of previews for this one, and everyone who played the original walked away giddy with the excitement to see how much Nintendo were doing with this one. Sadly, I'm a little too busy to play this one this week, but I'll certainly be adding it to my pile of shame since I never actually played the original, and that feels like a gap I ought to plug. Warhammer Age of Sigmar Realms of Ruin is a new RTS game set in the other part of the Warhammer universe, the one that doesn't get as much love as 40k these days. And can I just say that it's pretty cool that we're getting an RTS game of any description. This is a genre that's really fallen by the wayside this past decade. Hell, the last one I can recall seeing getting any major attention was Dune Spice Wars, and even that had a whole bunch of 4X stuff going on in it. Realms of Ruin looks to be a lot more by the numbers in the best possible way, and it's great to see this sort of game getting made in 2023. If this one interests you, it's hitting all platforms bar the Switch on the 17th. That Expanse Telltale game has now wrapped up all of its episodes and will make its way to Steam on the 20th. It got decent reviews, probably not a must-play if you're not a fan of the source material, but Belter loaders are sure to get a kick out of this one. And finally, Worldless arrives on all platforms on the 21st. This is that charming-looking 2D platformer that also has 2D combat. I profiled this one a few weeks ago in my Put This On Your Radar segment, and now it's out. Speaking of which, put this on your radar. CRPGs are undergoing a much-deserved renaissance at the moment thanks to not only Baldur's Gate 3, but before that, Disco Elysium. This is Sovereign Syndicate, and it definitely appears to be much closer to that Disco Elysium mold. It's a narrative-led, choice-driven CRPG with a twist, in that instead of being reliant on a dice roll to determine outcomes, you'll use tarot cards instead. The game features an open world set in a steampunk rendition of Victorian London with some simple but effective art design on display. It also features 3 playable characters, a human, a minotaur, and a robot that kind of looks like Blitzcrank. Each of these characters has their own unique backstory, and people will respond to them differently as you meet them, because yeah, if I met a Minotaur, I'd probably respond a little differently than if I just met a regular-ass human being. This one is a self-published title from Crimson Herring Studios, and it just locked in a release date, January 16th next year. If you'd like to check it out or maybe wishlist it, I've profiled it over on my Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This On Your Radar stuff I've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and one thing I will shout out is that Black Friday is coming pretty soon, but most retailers will start their Black Friday sales early. Sony, for example, just announced that the PlayStation Black Friday sale will kick off on the 17th, so if you're looking to scoop up some bargains, then the next week or two is a very good chance to do that. If it's straight up sort of free stuff you're looking for, then we've got a smattering of that too. Epic are right now giving away Golden Light, which is a very weird looking survival horror FPS, and later this week they'll be handing out Surviving the Aftermath, a post-apocalyptic city builder. Think The Last of Us, but top down and without the zombies. Prime Gaming are giving away a brand new release this week. It's that Invincible Presents Adam Eve game, which I spoke about last week. It's a visual novel based on the Adam Eve spin-off. If you're hankering for even more Invincible stuff with the release of Season 2, then Amazon have got you covered. Finally, Game Pass are having a pretty solid week. Dune Spice Wars hits the service for cloud and console. Rollerdrome makes a surprise appearance, which is fantastic because Rollerdrome is absolutely superb. Please, if you haven't played it, go out of your way to play it. It is that good. And finally, Persona 5 Tactica launches day and date on Game Pass, a very far cry from the days of Persona games being like a 3-year PlayStation exclusive. For our feel-good story for the week, I thought it'd be nice to do a bit of a warm-up round for the Game Awards by taking a look at the winners of the recent Golden Joystick Awards. This happened last week in the UK. I'm told that event organisers put on an open bar from 1 PM, and then the ceremony kicked off at like 6 PM, so you can imagine how loose things were by that point. Regardless, gongs were gonged, awards were handed out, and speeches were made. It was awesome to see Sea of Stars win Best Indie Game this year. The team behind that was so incredibly passionate and did such an amazing job. Really awesome to see them get that kind of recognition. Best performance went to none other than Ben Starr. Sadly, it was not for his iconic Mario audition, but rather his role as Clive Rosfield, the unreasonably attractive leading man of Final Fantasy XVI. There were some incredible voice performances this year, and Starr's work was truly outstanding. Very well deserved indeed. Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty got the Best Expansion Award. I'm not sure what the competition was for that category, but that seemed like a pretty easy W for CD Projekt Red. Best Nintendo Game went to Tears of the Kingdom. Best PlayStation Game went to Resident Evil 4 Remake, which is weird, but Spider-Man 2 wasn't eligible for the vote based on timing. And Best Xbox Game went to Starfield. Personally, I think Hi-Fi Rush deserved a look in, but hey, I have not yet played Starfield, so I couldn't say. The biggest winner of the night, though, was of course Baldur's Gate 3, which won a grand total of 7 awards, including Visual Design, Community, Best Supporting Performer to Neil Newborn, the voice of Astarion, PC Game of the Year, Best Storytelling, Studio of the Year, and of course, Ultimate Game of the Year. There were over 20 Larian developers at the event to celebrate in person, and it's truly incredible to see a self-published Dungeons & Dragons CRPG become the phenomenon that has become. And as impressive as this award sweep is, I expect we'll see a full repeat of it very soon at Jeff Keighley's shindig. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for you today. Not really sure what else to say, so I think I'll just end it there and say thank you very much for stopping by. I always really appreciate your time, and I will see you again this weekend. Bye-bye. Do you ever wonder how shit works? I mean, for real, do you ever look at your PC and think, what the hell is going on inside there? Do you ever see that famous Einstein equation, E=mc², and think to yourself, that's nice, I wonder what that means? Did you ever play Outer Wilds and think to yourself, it would be so much cooler if I knew the first thing about quantum mechanics? Well, if you answered yes to any of these questions, then can I suggest you check out this video's sponsor, Brilliant. Now, you might have heard of Brilliant. They provide really accessible, really interactive ways to learn about things like science, mathematics, engineering, computer science, and so much more. It's really interesting to me because growing up, I was always drawn to the arts, and I kind of shut my brain off to a lot of this STEM stuff. But the older I got, I was like, I would really like to understand exactly how GPS works. Not because I need to know, just because it's interesting to know. That's where Brilliant comes in. They have courses big and small, simple and in-depth, all of them illuminating something that seemed at first impenetrable, but really you just needed someone to explain it to you properly. Or you needed to learn by doing, which is another thing Brilliant excels at, since its courses almost always contain some interactive element that'll let you apply and test your learning on the spot. This stuff isn't just interesting, it can be really useful. If you work in data programming, for example, then the stuff you learn here can help you be better at your job. And just having a sharper, more curious mind is going to hold you in good stead no matter what you're doing. One thing I really like is that Brilliant kind of gamifies your learning, breaking your progress down into manageable chunks, giving you experience points and achievements for completing courses, and gradually upping the complexity as you get more proficient in a topic. Best of all, they have a mobile app, allowing you to log in and start learning whenever you've got a spare 5 or 10 minutes free. Sure, you could boot up a mobile game, and I absolutely do, but now I also boot up Brilliant from time to time. I find it just as fun and interesting, and it's actually useful. You can try Brilliant for free for 30 days, absolutely no cost, but if you do want to get an annual subscription, the first 200 people who subscribe will get 20% off their annual subscription. To sign up, visit brilliant.org/skillup, start learning free for 30 days, or get 20% off your annual subscription for the first 200 signups only over at brilliant.org/skillup. Thanks Brilliant for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.